The other night, we saw an NBA game end in a final score of 211 to 186. It was the highest scoring game in league history. What made everyone see this was that it took place during the NBA's All-Star Game. It was supposed to be a celebration of the best the NBA had to offer, and ended up being near universally hated by the fans. One of the players in the game even said he just views the All-Star break as a, quote, break, and doesn't think he'll ever look at it as competitive, which is kind of awful in my opinion, and if the players feel that way, we should just not even have these games. But if this is the quality of the product he doesn't find competitive, it's not hard to see why. The footage on screen right now from this game hardly qualifies as basketball. No defense, guys just chucking it up from past half court for laughs and attention. No stakes, nothing to get the players to feel the game matters. And that should never happen. People love watching the best at something team up in the same place at the same time. It's the same logic for why the 2016 XXL Freshman Cypher has so much cultural lore. It's why the Avengers first became such a big phenomenon. Baseball's All-Star Game kicked off this whole trend in sports, being a huge saving grace for the game during the Great Depression that has lasted all the way to today. I like to think I appreciate greatness. I'd watch the best few in the world at a lot of things go head-to-head. Whether it's athletics, video games, probably even knitting if you convinced me enough. But I had genuinely zero interest in watching 30 of the best basketball players on Earth compete. It shouldn't have been more interesting for me to watch the best high school seniors in my county have an all-star game than the greatest talents in the sport. We have a major problem with sports all-star games in the leagues within the US. We shouldn't, but we do. If you think plenty of them are bad, I agree with you. Don't click off just because you think some of these games couldn't even pass for games. I think that's also my metric for liking a sports all-star game, is how much it resembles what the sport normally looks like, and I totally agree plenty of them have slipped off the deep end. Let's both unravel what the biggest issues or high points are, then come up with some kind of actionable suggestions to improve their situations. So, we're going to review the All-Star Games of the 5 biggest team sports leagues in the country. Baseball, football, basketball, hockey, and soccer. Not necessarily in that order though. And decide how to fix what is a pretty amazing idea that has just lost so much of its shine over the last couple decades. So, we touched on basketballs earlier. Why don't we finish that thought first? The Basketball All-Star Game, in theory, should be the best. Just look at how those charity games after Hurricane Katrina went. It's proof that you can do it. Just the best players in the world playing a competitive pickup style brand of basketball. That's how Kobe Bryant always viewed it.
Fans want to see the best pickup game in the world. That's what this is. They don't want to see you running up and down and dunking and doing all this crazy. Like, they want to see what happens when you get this collection of best basketball players on the planet and they play and they go head up against each other.
Meanwhile, if you gave me the option to watch the NBA All-Star Game in its current state or paint drying, I would ask what color the paint is. The problem with the NBA All-Star Game is the lack of anything resembling basketball. You have to make it look like a real game again. But how do you do that? NBA Commissioner Adam Silver recognized the problem last year. He took exit feedback from the players who told him what they wanted was more time to prepare for the game like it was an actual game.
All right, we get it. Like, nobody was happy about the experience last year. No one at all. But we need a game. And I think what we got back from the players, fine though, but then you got to let us run through our typical routines. This is how we prepare for games. And if you're going to have us do a quick shoot around and stand there for 20 minutes while you do these really fancy intros, as much as everybody might love them, then you can't also expect us to play a game.
So here's my pitch to save the worst All-Star game of the sports I watch regularly. Take everything involving the All-Star players that isn't the three-point contest out of the rest of All-Star Weekend. That can stay because it still has top-end talent showing out. The dunk contest has been dead Anthony Edwards did the skills challenge lefty when he's right-handed. Oh yeah, I should probably also reveal that he's the guy who insinuated that he probably won't ever find the All-Star game to be anything more than a break. The lack of enthusiasm is even sliding into these events. Use that space of time to let the All-Stars have real time to practice and build something resembling team rapport with each other. Players pointed to an inability to have an actual pre-game routine with other entertainment events of All-Star Weekend taking that time away. So, put measures in place to allow the players to prepare accordingly with their teams so they can put forth a product of the same standard they give their NBA teams. That way, you're at least getting all-star team synergy, as good as what you could just do in 2K's blacktop mode. Then, in order to give the players something to play for, you promise donations to a charity of each winning player's choice. This year, they gave the team that scored the most points in every quarter a cash prize for charity, but how about letting the individual player have a cause of their choosing on the line? Plenty of them have foundations themselves they may want to earn donations for. Maybe even give a bigger payout for the player who earns the game's MVP. The 3-point contest between Steph Curry and Sabrina Ionescu was the best idea they've brought forth to All-Star Weekend in years, and they put personalized charitable donations from the NBA to back that, and the event was a huge competitive success. Put that same motivation into the game to make the players want to compete. I'd even be open to the idea of lowering it down to 3-on-3 to just let the great players have more of the focus. May sound like a gimmick to you, but since basketball is the sport where the great players matter the most, why don't we put more emphasis on that? I don't know, you see the problem though, about not letting the best players get to actually compete against each other in a real game. Even if it's more serious, that would be more fun than what you're getting right now. Okay, so you know how I just called the NBA All-Star Game the worst All-Star Game of the sports I watch regularly? Well, I'm not gonna call the Pro Bowl an actual game. That'd be too nice. Because I really believe the NFL Pro Bowl is unfixable. The Pro Bowl is played as a flag football game right now. That's where we're at for the All-Star game of the biggest sport and the biggest league in America. One year during COVID, they even did it on Madden with celebrities using the controller. And like, no.
Hell yeah, watch this.
Let's go.
Got Yes! Hurry up, hurry up.
No one wants to go to it. Players from the Super Bowl teams don't even go. Payouts to all the players aren't even enough to get people to attend the event. I really truly believe I could just stop here, but I hear you in the comments. When they'd have the Pro Bowl in Hawaii, the aura was there. And for a little bit, you were right. The uniforms were poppin', everyone was happy, it was in a city that's both beautiful and never gets other NFL activity. For a little bit, it was a fun, energetic celebration of football. Sean Taylor just ruined it all.
He's gonna come up short.
Sean Taylor blasting a punter into the upside down from Stranger Things opened up a reminder that even with the vibes being up, football is still so inherently dangerous. The good vibes peak of the Pro Bowl was, in the words of my Italian-American ancestors, fugazi. It was a phony. It was a mirage. The Pro Bowl prime was unsustainable, and Sean Taylor showed you why. By having the game this deep into the season, you've already got so many dudes carrying lingering injuries and soreness for so long now that they are in no mood to aggravate anything or actually get hurt.
The backfield. Now out of the backfield. Connor's got it. And he's slammed to the turf by Harold Landry.
The games aren't even in Hawaii anymore. Not nearly as many guys want to take their loved ones on vacations to Phoenix, Orlando, or Vegas as they do Hawaii. This is the start of how you get backup quarterbacks to become Pro Bowlers. Least of which, having people come out for an extra game of a sport where even the smallest looking hits can ruin your life. I used this exact point in a video a couple years ago, but see this hit on Rob Gronkowski? Looks like the most standard football hit imaginable, right? Yeah, this hit brought him so much pain he was unable to sleep for more than 20 minutes at a time without having excruciating pain in his life, and it was so bad that he just took a whole year off football. So what we have now is a game of beaten up dudes who don't really want to be there having to play flag football to maintain their basic human functioning. Like I said, I don't think there is a real way to save this one, but here's my best idea, because I did promise trying to fix it. Put the game in the summertime in Hawaii. No flag football, real contact. But to limit the amount of chance a guy can get hurt, cut the game in half. Invite the best players who've had more time to rest, expand the rosters too if you just want to make sure the same guys have less risk of injury before the season, and use the event as a celebration of football to give a little added juice to a season kicking off. Not really the same thing, but think of the benefits of the World Baseball Classic being a little before the season. Something for the league to do in the summer too, if you want to think of it like that. And if teams already have their starters play a drive or two in the first couple preseason games and are willing to take that risk of not getting hurt, think of it like that, but with rotating casts of the best players in each conference. I don't love it. I'm not even all that confident it would work. But that might be the most practical way to get something that could pass for football with all of the top talent there, and not just the ones from every non-Super Bowl team that just felt like making the flight. Also, I am certain without a shred of a doubt we are going to get people in the comments who just want the Rashard Mendenhall Pro Bowl. So, the last problematic one is hockey, and I've never actively watched the NHL in my life. It's my biggest blind spot in team sports, I'm willing to admit that. But hockey fans are up in arms about their All-Star game. So I called up one of my creator friends who's a die-hard hockey fan to explain why the NHL All-Star game isn't so great.
Hey there. For those that don't know, my name's Tyler Ward. I talk about the New York Mets here on YouTube at WardyNYM. I'm also a die-hard New York Rangers fan and a huge hockey fan. And I'm here to tell you that the NHL All-Star Game has been a joke and will continue to be a joke until things change and fast. Something that's been a common theme with all major sports and their All-Star Games. They have not been what they once were, and that is competitive, good, and actually having proper incentives to perform well. Now, when we look at the NHL All-Star Game, it is formatted in a horrendous fashion, in my opinion, where you have 4 teams playing 3 games. These teams consist of every division in the NHL. And something that the NHL is very adamant on is that they make sure that there's at least one player represented from every single team in the NHL. Why is that a problem? Because that means even bottom feeder teams that have no proper players to even put on a pedestal to have in the All-Star Game that aren't even worthy of being there are going to be there because of how this current format is. And instead of doing your normal 5-on-5, 3 periods of 20 minutes per period, instead, now you have these 3 games where they're 10-minute intervals that you're getting, 10-minute halves rather. Then ultimately you have a winner out of these 3 games. They have a cash prize. You probably win a car too, and that's that. But it's less than enjoyable to watch at home, to say the least. And when I think about the best NHL All-Star games, I think about a decade ago when you actually were playing an All-Star game and they did care. Things have changed quite a bit in major sports. I'm fully aware of that. It's not like what it used to be. They're trying to eliminate injuries or trying to eliminate risk while they're doing these fan type event appreciation. So while that's great and all, this is supposed to be fan driven for a reason. It's supposed to be enjoyable. There's little to nothing digestible, in my humble opinion, about this current format. And to make it better, show us actual hockey. Show us the best players from both the East and the West, like how it used to be. The best player, in your opinion, from the East and your best player from the West. And those two will be the captains, the leaders of said teams, and they will make their individual selections for who they want in the All-Star game. That is how it should be done. That is how you're going to get the best players possible each and every year that deserve to be there, and don't just have this participation trophy badge on their chest or whatever it may be, and incentivize them to actually perform well by having it where whoever wins between the East and the West, okay, that may say help you down the road with some advantages that the NHL, of course, can get unique and come up with. Different types of player incentives as well. Say the leading goal scorer will get an additional bonus. The leading assist guy will get a leading bonus, you know, to their favorite charities, whatever it may be. The point is that you can get very creative, and it's not difficult to mess up a hockey game, but you just have to make sure that they are incentivized to, 1, push their hardest, and 2, defend. That's the big thing. The lack of defense is what made the NHL deviate from the normal All-Star game format to now these 4 games with 4 teams with 3 games, and it's just a bunch of nonsense. Go back to how things were, but give them proper incentives to actually do their best to hustle and have a hard-fought, entertaining hockey game. And thank you for coming to my TED Talk.
Now, we have 2 leagues left, Major League Baseball and Major League Soccer. And this may come as a surprise to the big baseball contingent of our audience, but I'm actually going to talk about the baseball one first. because I actually think there's more room for improvement in that one, even though it is now garnering a reputation of the best All-Star game in sports. I am slightly biased because I've watched the MLB All-Star game every year since I was 8 years old. It is just so good and so fun. It's managed to stay loose, but kept stakes and play that actually looks like real baseball. It does this in spite of having sort of gimmicky uniforms and the game being meaningless now, officially. I'm actually in favor of not having it determine which league gets home field advantage in the World Series anymore, because I do find that to be a stupid way of determining this. But the reason the baseball All-Star game even resorted to that is for a reason that does sort of separate it from feeling like baseball. The pitchers barely go more than an inning, so it does have slight early season spring training game vibes with the pitching. One year they had to call the game a tie because both teams completely ran out of pitchers after just 10 innings, which neither of those things should ever happen in a regular baseball game, if you ask me.
And this game will end in a 7-7 tie.
I will, for the first time in any of these games, give genuine praise, though. The baseball All-Star game has been mostly full of fun and mostly free of drama. I did say mostly. It has also gone on for almost 90 years now and has rarely ever seen anyone get hurt, while most of the guys at least look like they're trying for real, which I think is pretty impressive, especially for how long this has been going on. I do have two slight nitpicks to improve the game though, which is why we're here. One, let the guys wear their real uniforms again. This was just such a cool aesthetic to see. And the only video game I had that ever actually included this as a feature was MLB Power Pros, so even years after these games came out, I just make all-star teams and play with them for fun, just because for some reason I love the look of all the different uniforms in sync out there. It makes more sense to do this in the baseball all-star game than the basketball one, for example, because every team mostly has a white uniform and a gray uniform. It looks close enough. Except now the Mariners and the Rays knocked out the gray uniform, which makes this a throwback jersey now. But even these dark blue uniforms would be more than acceptable for me under the circumstances. And two, remove the rule where one player per team has to be represented. I've gone on before that I believe these games should be representative of the best players in each sport competing for real. Giving a pity roster spot to someone from a bad team over a better player from a better team doesn't really do it for me anymore. Of course, on a human level, I do appreciate that more guys get to have opportunity to become all-stars, but the reason we're here is to talk about what makes these games the best version of themselves. I understand why the rule was there, especially for when the league had less teams, but we're probably headed to 32 MLB teams by around 2030. We do not need all of them to be forced into representation on a roster spot. Give me the best guys in the league facing off. Baseball is the sport where they've pulled that off for the longest time without compromising the integrity of that game. I never miss watching the baseball all-star game. It's always fun, and it's pretty competitive. But another league cracked the meta for how to have the coolest competitive all-star game in the land. From 2005 to 2019, Major League Soccer's all-star game every year followed a simple format. The best players from MLS against a top-end European club. This made sense for a while. Soccer, yes, I'm calling it that, was much smaller for a US-based league than a European one. So matchup-wise, their league's best players versus one team from an elite league overseas was a palatable game to grow both brands in new areas. I actually went to one in 2018 in Atlanta against Juventus, and it was a great time, with over 70,000 people in attendance for a soccer game in the United States. But as MLS grew in talent and soccer in the region got more expansive, a new idea supplanted this. The best idea for an all-star game I've ever seen. MLS versus Liga MX. US versus Mexico. That is a rivalry that has long predated the first game of its kind between the leagues in 2021. The national team matchups are always dogfights, and both teams and their fans desperately want to beat each other. They even made a documentary just about that rivalry, so capturing it once a year between the leagues, now that they both have a little bit of pull to them, was brilliant. The crowds were into it, the games were good, What more could you ask for? Now, if you do say, why does it matter if it's just the leagues and not the national teams? I raise you that the people involved don't care. They still just want that national pride of simply, we are better than you. And oh my god, now that Messi is in MLS, the growth of the MLS brand culminated into the biggest it ever has. This game would be cinema, especially if it's placed in Mexico. But the MLS All-Star Game, as it currently stands, is not perfect, because they took this away after just 2 seasons.
No. Wait.
2023 was MLS versus European team again, and 2024 has no plans on record to run it back against Liga MX. Why? Because they thought it was overkill to do that and the new tournament they started between individual MLS and Liga MX teams. Which, no it isn't. Those are individual clubs. This is one game of the best each has to offer for even more league pride, even more national pride, and a better event for soccer in North America. All you need to do to perfect the MLS All-Star Game, in my humble opinion, is simply reset this back to MLS versus Liga MX. You get the best talent in the league coming together to compete, but as one unit, gunning for a common goal, to beat the league from the nation of US soccer's biggest rival. Would go out on a limb and say Liga MX players and fans would be so on board with the idea of them winning that too. You can still do this because it is such an ingenious idea that resulted in palpable energy and a new way to get the best out of everyone involved. Bring it back. Please. I will get off my soapbox, I promise you that. It's just a great showcase for your league. Anyways, yeah, I love All-Star Games. I want them to be good and competitive products. Please leave some comments on your own thoughts of where we're at with them and where you think the room for improvement is with this. I recognize we may not agree on all this, so I want to hear what you think. Alright, I'm out.